In dance, we have this really bad tendency of actually increasing the amount of rehearsals and amount of work being done leading up to performance. And it actually should be the complete opposite of that. What you want to focus on is gradually reducing the intensity and the duration of your rehearsals so that you're giving your muscles adequate time to repair and rebuild leading into whatever that competition weekend is for you. Hey dancers, welcome back to the Unchoreographed podcast. I am your host, Dr. Jenna Lower. I'm a physical therapist and dance medicine specialist. And today we are going to be talking about something really fun. In this solo episode, I'm going to be giving you 5 of my essential tips for competition day. So competition season is officially here. You might have already had your competitions. I know some of my dancers have already done YAGPs, and you may just be in the beginning of your season preparing for your first competition. But either way, I want to make sure that you are prepared and ready to go with some of the essential tips that will help keep you healthy throughout the competition day and season as a whole. So let's get right into it with tip number 1. So the first thing that I wanted to bring to your attention is the importance of tapering your exercise and rehearsals prior to the week of the competition. In dance, we have this really bad tendency of actually increasing the amount of rehearsals and amount of work being done leading up to performance. And it actually should be the complete opposite of that. So if we think about like the traditional athletic world, what usually happens is we kind of prepare our body and get ready in preseason leading up until competition. And then when you hit actual competition season and performing, like the day that you have to perform, you're actually already at peak performance so that you're sort of able to taper off leading into that competitive time. In dance, we tend to do the opposite. We tend to work harder and harder the closer that competition season gets. And it is tricky because in dance, there isn't necessarily a competition or an in-season, I should say. There sure is a competition season, but you're kind of in season all year round between competitions, and then you're right into summer intensives, and then you're right into start of the school year and Nutcracker, and it just kind of never ends. So it's really difficult to do this well because there really isn't like the normal setup of a preseason, in-season, postseason like there would be in traditional athletics. But nonetheless, tapering is still a really important piece of your competitive success. So basically, the idea behind this is that your body needs a little bit of time to recover so that it can actually be at its peak when you hit competition day. When we work harder and harder leading up to it, what actually ends up happening is that we start to getting into a little bit of tricky territory as far as overtraining goes. And usually our bodies start to shut down a little bit. We are overtired. We are sore. Our body is needing more rest and recovery than we are giving it. And so what this essentially is going to do is create not as good of a performance as we would want it to be. We're not necessarily going to be at our peak on the day of competition, which is the complete opposite of what you want to be happening, right? So instead, what you want to focus on is gradually reducing the intensity and the duration of your rehearsals so that you're giving your muscles adequate time to repair and rebuild leading into whatever that competition weekend is for you. Things that you can do sort of instead of rehearsing harder: visualization and like working on fine-tuning technique and refining technique or spacing and things like that are totally fine to be doing. Those are all much lower intensity activity than like full run-throughs. And so changing up the types of activity that you're doing to prepare leading into competition day can be really helpful. I remember, I have very vivid memories of when we were at, nationals, being in the parking lot at midnight the night before, running our dances over and over and over, back to back on basically concrete or gravel in the parking lot, right? And we had injuries happen during that time frame, and we had, people were just tired because then we had to be up 6 a.m. the next morning. And so really, when you think about it, what is that what is that accomplishing? Probably nothing. Whatever you don't know the day before competition, you're probably not going to learn in, those couple hours leading up to it. So it's much more effective to allow your body time to rest and recover, and instead focus on maybe the things that are less intense, like your spacing and your visualization and all of that. And maybe, again, fine tuning some like technical things. Studio owners, teachers, if you are listening to this, I want you to make sure that you understand this too, because the dancer themselves isn't always the one that's in control of if they can be tapering. So you as the higher up have to take that initiative to make sure that you are training your dancers adequately going into their competitive season, making sure that you're allowing them time to rest and recover so that they are not feeling guilty if they're asking for it. That's really important. And I promise if you do this, you will only see performance improvements, not suffering. So it definitely is a huge thing to consider adding in. And I would strongly urge you, if you're not already in the habit of doing this, then you should implement it starting this year. On the other side of things, aside from just rehearsals, the other thing that I'm generally recommending that my dancers are tapering are their exercises. So if they are doing a strength and conditioning program with me or they're doing rehab exercises, we also sort of want to taper those things off in the week or two leading up to competition. So just a few things to consider on that one. And let's get right into tip number 2. So the second one is prioritize sleep. This is a big one. I think that, when you are a high schooler, your schedules are packed, they're busy, you are trying to get in schoolwork and balancing friends, and then of course all your rehearsals and practices, and it's a lot. It can be really, really overwhelming. And so one of the first things that starts to go is the sleep. You get home from rehearsals late at night, 9, 10 o'clock at night, and then you still have to do your homework. And so sleep really does struggle. And so I would urge you to figure out what you can do to try to get more sleep into your routine during not only competition season, but really throughout the year. But it does become a bit more important when you are trying to perform at your peak. Ideally, we're aiming for 7 to 9 hours of good quality sleep in the days leading up to your event. And so you want to make sure that your body, again, has enough time to repair and recharge, because really this is essential for optimal performance. Things that can help, like if you struggle with sleep, things that might be able to help you are creating sort of a calming bedtime routine, making sure that you are not staring at screens in the couple hours leading up to bedtime. You are in lower lighting, you can kind of dim the lights down. And then, of course, there's lots of relaxation techniques that you can use. You can have some sleepy time tea, which is a great way to calm your body down. You can take a warm bath. You can do a gentle stretching or yoga routine, or, of course, meditation is another great thing to do. For me, I'm like, I don't have time to also meditate and get sleep, right? It's a lot of things to manage. So a good thing to do is pop in your earbuds and you can fall asleep while you're putting on your meditation music and going to sleep as you're doing that at the same time. So you kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone. And I guarantee you will probably fall asleep a whole lot faster when you do that. If, I think for a lot of people, especially the night before competition, there may be some nerves involved. You might be feeling kind of jittery and your mind is racing. And so something that you can do, I'm sure you've heard this before, but it really does help, is trying to journal. So before you go to sleep, write it down on a pad of paper, and that way it's there, you've gotten it out of your brain, it's on the nightstand right next to you, and you don't have to worry about it. You can kind of let that thought go. It really can be a powerful tool in improving your sleep. But again, just to reiterate, you are shooting for 7 to 9 hours of sleep, at least in that week leading up to competition, if you wanted to achieve optimal performance. Tip number 3. Focus in on your hydration and nutrition. Now, this, of course, is not just a tip. I think most of these are not just tips for competition week, but they are also kind of long-term things that you want to be considering throughout the year. But again, it becomes very important when we are trying to achieve optimal performance. So that means we have to keep our body fueled and hydrated so that it has the energy that it needs in order to perform at its best. This means things like making sure you're balancing your macronutrients, so getting enough carbohydrates, proteins, and healthy fats, not eliminating one of those groups, but making sure that you are getting a healthy balance of all of those groups, making sure that you are fueling yourself for a day of performance or, a long day between school and rehearsals. You definitely want to make sure that you are packing and food prepping these snacks and meals ahead of time, because day of, it can be really difficult, not only when you're just like in rehearsal mode, but when you are actually at performance day, competition day. Making sure that you are prepped and ready to go the night before is going to be huge, so that you can just grab those healthy snacks and keep yourself fueled and energy levels sort of stable throughout the performance day. I think, the food choices sometimes on competition day or convention day are a little iffy. Often we're just grabbing fast food in those quick little breaks that you have, and it is really doing anything but fueling your performance. And so making sure that you are prepared with food from home so that you actually have access to some healthy options will make all the difference. Obviously, also making sure that you're hydrating. I think on performance days, competition days, adding a little bit of electrolytes into your water can be really beneficial as well, so that you are making sure that you're replenishing all of the nutrients that you're losing throughout the day. We're usually sweating a little bit more on those days, working a little bit harder, so electrolytes can help balance things out a little bit more for you and make you feel better. And then, of course, like a day of competition, you want to make sure that you're avoiding like any brand new foods or heavy foods, things that are going to bog you down. So again, that the fast food, the foods on the go, we want to make sure that you're trying to avoid those things, because it's going to make you feel worse. So choosing things and meals that are a little bit better balanced is going to be the best thing for you. Now, I am not a nutritionist, so I'm not going to give you ideas of what to use. Instead, I'm going to direct you to my good friend, Melissa Leinberg, who is a dance nutritionist, who also will be working with me very soon in a much closer capacity in the clinic here. And she is an excellent resource for you guys when it comes to knowing what your body needs and what works for you, because it isn't the same for everybody. So if you are needing some tips and suggestions for what you actually should be consuming in the days, weeks, months leading up to performance, she's your girl. I'm going to leave all of her information linked in the show notes so that you guys can reach out to her and set up a consultation and get some tips that are, again, more personalized to you for that. All right, moving into tip number 4. This is another biggie. We've got warm-ups and cool-downs. You must make sure that you are doing an adequate warm-up and cool-down, again, all the time, but especially on competition day. I think sometimes we tend to forget that it's just equally as important, because maybe you're only dancing for 2-3 minutes at a time, but that warm up is going to make sure that you can perform at your best. So making sure that you know what to do for a warm up ahead of time, and then being able to execute it day of, no matter what, non-negotiable. You are making time for it in your schedule. I don't care, no excuses. We must make time for it before you go on stage. That is going to be a huge performance boost for you guys, I promise. So things that you want to consider when you are putting in a warm-up. All of the movements should be increasing blood flow, warming up the tissues, which means we need a lot of dynamic-based movements. We're not just sitting in a straddle, sitting in a split, stretching. We're actually moving our body and increasing the amount of blood flow, the temperature, the mobility. We're kind of gradually raising from baseline. So making sure that you are moving through motions is going to be really important. You can get bigger and bigger with the range of motion, but we're not going to start with huge range of motion and ballistic movements. We're going to kind of build up to that. And then at the end of your warm-up, once you're already warm, that's when you can incorporate a little bit more of the bigger range of motion, stretching type things. And this will help prevent you from getting hurt when you are on stage. Making sure that you maybe do some things that are going to activate muscles that you're going to need most. So turnout obviously is a big one. We want to make sure that those turnout muscles are primed and ready to go. So that's a good muscle to make sure that you include in a warm-up. Obviously core, that's another big one that is your powerhouse for everything that you do. making sure that you're warming up your hips, that, you'll be able to hit those extensions and penchés and everything that all the big ranges of motions that your legs may need to do. So we really want to make sure that your warm up is tied directly to what your choreography is for competition, and that you're warming up those key muscles that you would need to be, that you need to incorporate in your dancing. If you're not sure, what should I be doing for a warm-up? What should this look like? Again, please feel free to reach out to me. This is a service that I offer where we can look at your choreography and come up with a movement pattern, a warm-up sequence that is going to be most beneficial to you and sort of directed at exactly what it is that your body needs. The other thing too is I do have a free resource going through a more generalized 5-minute warm-up, which I will link that below as well, just to kind of give you a general idea of things that should be included, or you can take it and use it as you like. But I will link all that in the show notes as well. On the flip side of things, we want to pay attention to your cool down as well. Cool down is just as important in making sure that you don't have delayed onset muscle soreness, and that we're not getting any injuries that are, or aches and pains that are happening post-performance. And so cooling down, this is where you can then start to incorporate a little bit more of some gentle stretching. It's generally okay to be doing more static stretching in this because we don't really need that increased blood flow as much on the back end, although we are still going to want to incorporate a lot of gentle movement-based exercises because that's what's actually going to help filter some of that waste product out and prevent some of the delayed onset muscle soreness. Going through a nice little yoga flow, going through some gentle stretching, that's all going to be really helpful here. And again, if you'd like something that's more customized to you, please feel free to reach out. I'll put my contact info below in the show notes. Another little tip for you guys on this, I would again, prepare and pack your dance bag the day before. So making sure that you have tools that you might need, like a light resistance band, a foam roller, a massage gun, whatever it is that you like to use, that can all be incorporated in both your warm up and your cool down. So make sure that you have that stuff prepped and ready to go the night before, so you're not stressed out and running around in the morning trying to find everything. And that is the perfect segue into tip number 5, which is paying attention to stress management and your mental well-being. So obviously, performance anxiety is a very natural thing to feel, but learning how to manage it effectively will be a game changer in how you actually feel like you can perform on stage. Doing things like mindfulness techniques, so some of these strategies here would be things like deep breathing, visualization, meditation. You can do progressive muscle relaxation, anything that's going to help kind of keep you grounded, calm your nervous system down, especially leading into the night before a performance, which is when a lot of those pre-performance jitters tend to show up, and then even right before performance, right? So I think a lot of times we feel like, well, I don't want to do something that's going to calm me down before performance. I want to get amped up. And sometimes the opposite is true. Sometimes when our anxiety is high and our nervous system is sort of on alert, getting prepared and ready, it can actually be more helpful to calm the nervous system down prior to going on stage, because you kind of know, you get that jittery, anxious feeling. It's sometimes harder to perform well. Once you've been on stage for a minute or two and it starts to dissipate, things start to feel smoother and better. But wouldn't it be nice if you could get that feeling when you first stepped on stage versus a minute into your routine? Doing some of these kind of anxiety or pre-performance rituals to lower anxiety and calm the nervous system can actually make sure that that happens. So again, it could be that you have a specific playlist that you like to listen to kind of get you grounded and ready. It might be a mantra that you have, which can be really any helpful saying that gets you through that performance and anxiety. It might just be spending a few minutes doing some deep breathing or meditation, kind of zoning in, getting in the zone, as we like to say, but quiet, right? Dance competitions are very loud. There's a lot going on. So if you can kind of quiet your mind, again, pop in your earbuds if you need to, quiet your mind and do some reflection and meditation for yourself, that generally will help lower that nervous system response so that when you step on stage, you are just ready to go. I am a big fan of diaphragmatic breathing, so even just being able to take 5 belly breaths to sort of prep your nervous system and get ready prior to stepping on stage, even just 5 breaths can make all the difference in the world. And again, this is something I can link for you guys. I have a video talking through what diaphragmatic breathing is. So if you're not familiar with it, you can kind of get to know what it is and why it works for nervous system regulation. So that's it. Those are our 5 tips for competition season. Just to recap, the first one, tapering your exercise and rehearsal time in the week or 2 leading up to competition. Number 2, prioritizing sleep. Number 3, focusing in on hydration and nutrition. Number 4, making sure that you are getting a solid warm up and cool down every time you dance. And number 5, prioritizing your stress management and your mental well-being. So hopefully you guys found this helpful. Have some actionable tips that you can walk away from and implement as your next competition day. I want to make sure that you feel confident and prepared and know exactly what you need to be working on. As always, if you have any questions or feel like you need a little bit more support in any of these areas, please do not hesitate to reach out. I love connecting with you guys, answering questions, and of course, if we need to schedule a discovery call or a visit to figure out some tailored options to you, I am more than happy to do that with you. If you did find today's episode helpful, please be sure to share it with a fellow dancer, and please help us spread the word by leaving a review. It really helps me reach more dancers just like yourself. You can connect with me on social media at Dr. Jenna Lower. Again, I will link all my contact information in the show notes below. And as always, thank you guys for being here and tuning in, and I will see you next time on Unchoreographed.